This video is sponsored by Squarespace. In 1994, the science fiction genre was gifted a new icon in the form of Stargate. Though it received mixed reviews from critics, the film wowed audiences with its imaginative concepts, impressive effects, and spectacular world. The film became the sleeper hit of that year, and it didn't take long for the film's director Roland Emmerich and producer Dean Devlin to start entertaining the idea of a sequel. Although their big screen plans would never come to fruition, audiences were able to return to the Stargate universe on the small screen. Like Emmerich and Devlin, the film's rights holders MGM saw potential in turning Stargate from a sleeper hit into a multimedia franchise. The studio had acquired the rights to Stargate from the film's original production company, Coralco, after Coralco filed for bankruptcy following the disastrous release of Cutthroat Island. Despite Stargate's success on the big screen, MGM decided to pursue a television spin-off rather than a direct sequel. Word of this project soon travelled through the grapevine to arrive at the ears of writer-producers Brad Wright and Jonathan Glasner, who both separately approached MGM to work on the new show. The two had previously worked on MGM's revival of the sci-fi series The Outer Limits. Seeing their mutual enthusiasm for the material, MGM president John Sims asked them to work together on the pitch. Their pitch described an almost Star Trek-like show of a team exploring planets of the week, but using the Stargate rather than a spaceship. It was during these pitch meetings that the show's title was created, when Sims asked Wright and Glasner if the team should be called SG-1. Finding a home for Stargate SG-1 proved to be quite painless, as MGM already had a good relationship with the premium network Showtime, which had broadcast The Outer Limits. Due to Stargate's move to television, the original film's stars James Spader and Kurt Russell were well outside the new show's budget. Even so, the series would need a marquee name to attract audience interest. It was Sims who approached Richard Dean Anderson with the possibility of taking over the role of Colonel Jack O'Neill from Kurt Russell. Richard Dean Anderson was a household name on American television thanks to his starring role in MacGyver. Anderson, who was joined by his producing partner Michael Greenberg, was interested in the project, but only if he could bring more humor to the O'Neill character.
Kurt Russell is just, he's a phenomenal guy, and he did a great job with it, with the character. But I knew just by looking at his hair that I couldn't do that. I mean, who can do that with their hair?
He also wanted SG-1 to be more of an ensemble show, as opposed to MacGyver, which Anderson effectively carried by himself. Thankfully, Wright, Glasner, and the higher-ups at MGM all agreed to Anderson's requests, and he was soon signed on as lead actor and executive producer. Taking over from James Spader in the role of Dr. Daniel Jackson was Canadian actor Michael Shanks. Unlike Richard Dean Anderson, Shanks chose to skew his performance far closer to his movie counterpart.
Well, the character came really easy because I just ripped off James Spader's role. Just ripped off all of his mannerisms and acting, and they liked that.
However, Shanks, being over a decade younger than Spader, meant his take on the character had a more youthful energy, with a quicker cadence and higher physical energy. Even so, Michael Shanks managed to replicate the character so well that when I was a kid, I actually thought Spader and Shanks were the same actor. Making up the other members of SG-1 were Amanda Tapping as Samantha Carter and Christopher Judge as Teal'c. Tapping was no stranger to science fiction, having previously worked with Wright and Glasner on The Outer Limits, and had also had a guest role in The X-Files before joining Stargate. Christopher Judge was briefly a star player in American college football, but this was only a stepping stone to his long-term goal of becoming an actor. His first regular role was on the Canadian police drama Sirens, but before that, he had a guest role on MacGyver, where he shared a scene with Richard Dean Anderson. Another MacGyver veteran was Don S. Davis, who joined Stargate SG-1 as General George Hammond. Terrell Rothery joined as a recurring cast member in the role of Dr. Janet Fraser. Alexis Cruz reprised his role as Skara from the movie, and later so did Eric Avari as Kasuf. Production took place in Vancouver, Canada, where a massive 3-story set was built of Stargate Command. The original Stargate prop from the movie was unfortunately unusable. Allegedly, after the movie wrapped production, the Stargate was left outside in the harsh California sun, which irreversibly bleached and warped the prop. Production designer Richard Heudelin's only use for the original Stargate was taking molds from it to create a new Stargate for the show. In total, 2 Stargates were built, one for the main studio set and another lighter Stargate which could be propped up on location. The production was a huge undertaking which necessitated massive set builds and elaborate costume designs on a near weekly basis. The special effects team also had their work cut out for them, with numerous large explosions required for many episodes. Their work also included Jaffa chest plates with built-in spark squibs and 2 staff weapons which opened and fired practically. Thankfully, this heavy workload rarely brought the mood of the production team down. Richard Dean Anderson made a conscious effort to maintain a fun and light-hearted atmosphere on set. This was an effort which paid off immensely, as the cast and crew hit it off almost immediately. At one point during production of the series, Kurt Russell was shooting the film at 3,000 miles to Graceland, in which he played Elvis Presley, at Vancouver Film Studios. The producers took the opportunity to invite the actor to the SG-1 set, which he gladly accepted.
The before and after of Jack O'Neill.
Visual effects were provided primarily by Rainmaker Studios, with assistance from Image Engine. At this point, digital visual effects was becoming more commonplace in television productions thanks to the pioneering effects efforts of Babylon 5. While the various Star Trek shows airing at the same time still made use of practical miniatures, Stargate SG-1's effects were almost entirely digital. That is with the exception of the Asgard aliens, who were created using on-set puppetry. The voices for the Asgard were provided by regular cast members like Michael Shanks and Terrell Rothery.
So we were doing this one shot where the camera is behind us and Thor and I are standing side by side looking at this big green screen of special effects, and whoever was controlling the puppet put Thor's arm up so it touched my bum. And it was quite funny. And I turned without even thinking and just smacked him. And there's this big resounding whack off the puppet. And then I apologized to the puppet. I mean, I don't even know what I was thinking. I went, oh my God, I'm sorry. Oh, you're a puppet.
The opening of the Stargate, nicknamed the Kawoosh, was initially filmed as a practical element like it was in the movie. However, this was later recreated using a computer simulation. Joel Goldsmith, son of legendary film composer Jerry Goldsmith, was brought on to score the show. His first task was reorchestrating David Arnold's main theme from the movie. He combined the main march with a short action cue heard during the film's final battle sequence. Whereas Arnold's original theme emphasized wonder and mystery, Goldsmith's version was more adventurous with a faster tempo and added percussion. The first episode of Stargate SG-1, the feature-length Children of the Gods, premiered on the 27th of July, 1997. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the only tool you'll need to create a beautiful looking website for your business, portfolio, or online store. I used it to create my production company's website, and I didn't know the first thing about coding. I just found a template that worked for me and customized it using simple drag and drop tools. And now the process is even easier thanks to Squarespace's new Blueprint system. Choose from a variety of professionally curated layout and styling options, tailored to your own website and optimized for every device. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast thanks to integrated SEO tools, and grow the way you want. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your website and use the coupon code RowanJColeman for 10% off your first purchase.
When the gate is opened,
Oh my God.
The adventure of a lifetime is only just beginning.
What are you doing? Don't touch it!
And the journey to exciting new worlds begins with the first step, Stargate SG-1. A gateway to the imagination has been opened, and a new universe of action and adventure has been unleashed. Join Richard Dean Anderson as he continues to lead the way on the greatest journey of all time, Stargate SG-1.
Although Children of the Gods is the debut of Stargate SG-1, it also works as the sequel to the original movie, which inadvertently served the function of a pilot episode. As with many pilot episodes, there are many changes between the movie and the series proper. The Stargate movie, for all of its faults, did one thing very well, and that is convey a sense of wonder and exploration. However, it's clear from SG-1's opening scene that the series is headed in a much different direction. A group of guards sits idly by, passing the time on their backwater assignment, blissfully unaware of the importance of the strange ring device in the room. That is, until the Stargate springs back to life, and suddenly armoured alien soldiers pour through, swiftly kidnapping one of the guards and dispatching the others. Soon Colonel Jack O'Neill is called out of retirement to lead a mission back to Abydos in the hopes of pulling off a rescue and finding out who this new enemy is. Stargate SG-1 swaps mystery and exploration for pulp action-adventure. Speaking for myself, I've always lamented the strengths of the movie being lost in this change of creative direction, epitomised by the main antagonists of the show, the Goa'uld. Several retcons turn the movie's Ra from the alien tyrant of a single world with Lovecraftian overtones of cosmic horror into one of many rulers of a galaxy-spanning empire. The method of possession, implied in the movie to be Ra transferring his consciousness into another body, is also changed to alien parasites. In a relatively short amount of time, the lingering mysteries of the movie are all solved, leaving the viewer with a near complete history of the Goa'uld from their origins to the present. As someone who grew up watching the Stargate movie, and only recently became a fan of the shows, I've always felt a tinge of dissatisfaction with these retcons, and the in-depth explanations they led to. However, I know I'm likely in the minority in this view, as many of the most passionate Stargate fans became fans because of this series. And for good reason too. Despite my personal preferences, Stargate SG-1 is an infectiously fun series which entertains and thrills. Unlike other more well-known sci-fi series, Stargate SG-1 doesn't take long to find its footing. The benefit of building off the original movie allows SG-1's premiere to cut to the chase. There's no need to establish what the Stargate is, where it came from, or what it does. Any newcomers are quickly brought up to speed by O'Neill and Hammond's first conversation, so they too can sit back and enjoy the adventure. Children of the Gods is also a well-presented TV movie. It's helped considerably by its access to visual effects shots and music cues from the original movie. Director Mario Azzopardi also makes sure to show off the expansive sets and locations with long, impressive crane shots. The production values continue to impress when the action moves to Abydos, with 2 more large interior sets. The presentation does take a hit when the film moves off Abydos and onto Chulak. The limits of the TV movie's resources become very obvious here. Canada is, of course, a beautiful country, but its locations lack the exoticism of the Nevada desert used in the movie. Throughout the series, it becomes almost comedic how many planets in the Stargate universe look like British Columbia. Then again, all of Star Trek's planets look like California, so this shortcoming can be forgiven. Even so, SG-1's premiere episode has such an engrossing rhythm that the viewer is rarely taken out of the story by the 90s TV production values. Children of the Gods hits many of the major pulp sci-fi adventure beats in quick succession. Apophis is quickly established as the main arch-villain, new worlds are discovered and visited, our heroes are captured and then stage a daring escape, the whole thing just rattles along. This quick pace, while engaging, can rush through some important story beats however. While Teal'c's turn from Apophis's right-hand man to SG-1 ally is explored in greater depth later in the show, this turn in Children of the Gods feels quite sudden. The seeds are planted in the episode's first scene, with Teal'c being disillusioned with his role, Later it's made clear he has become numbed by Apophis's cruelty, so the setup is there. What's lacking is a pivotal moment to fully push Teal'c over the edge. O'Neill simply insists,
I can save these people! Help me. Many have said that.
to which Teal'c responds,
But you are the first I believe could do it!
Based on not much of anything. The following episode, The Enemy Within, even has O'Neill passionately vouching for Teal'c to General Hammond, despite the two only knowing each other for a short amount of time. Thankfully, both episodes have enough going on to keep the viewer engaged, even when the show is in a hurry to establish its status quo. Children of the Gods and The Enemy Within firmly establish Stargate SG-1 as an action show. Barely an episode goes by without a death-defying stunt, gun battle, or chase sequence. The show's stunt and special effects teams succeed brilliantly in crafting some thrilling and impressive action sequences. The cast is also in top form from the start. Despite some poorly aged dialogue.
And just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside, doesn't mean I can't handle whatever you can handle.
The chemistry between Anderson, Tapping, Shanks, and Judge is palpable. Anderson nicely threads the needle with his performance in the first episode, establishing his more light-hearted take on the character while still maintaining some of Kurt Russell's seriousness.
You ever think of writing a book about your exploits in the line of duty?
I've thought about it, but then I'd have to shoot anyone that actually read it. That's a joke, sir.
Amanda Tapping pulls off an even more impressive performance as Samantha Carter. Not only is she responsible for rattling off most of the sci-fi technobabble, she also acts as the audience surrogate to some degree. Without Daniel Jackson, it's Carter who conveys a sense of wonder and excitement about going through the Stargate. At the same time, she also has to be convincing in the action sequences. Samantha Carter's character is needed to perform so many functions in the plot that it's a testament to Amanda Tapping's talents that she also succeeds in making Carter charming and likable.
You know, you really will like me when you get to know me.
Oh, I adore you already, Captain.
Meanwhile, Christopher Judge firmly establishes Teal'c through his physical and vocal presence alone. Despite his arc in the first episode being so rushed, Judge's commitment to the part and his impressive grasp of period dialogue leaves a strong impression on the audience. Michael Shanks is really the only member of the cast who doesn't firmly put his stamp on his character. In Children of the Gods, his uncanny imitation of James Spader's performance is impressive, but it wasn't until much later in the series that he made the role his own. By the end of its second episode, Stargate SG-1 has already demonstrated its great potential as a show. The scope of the universe has widened, new foes and allies have been encountered, and the seeds of longer-running story threads have been firmly planted. With the iconic foursome of O'Neill, Jackson, Carter, and Teal'c together, SG-1 steps through the Stargate for their first year of adventures. Paralleling the original movie, critical reception to Children of the Gods was mixed, but it was a hit in the ratings. Showtime made a real event out of the premiere, following up the feature-length broadcast with a behind-the-scenes special with previews of upcoming episodes. The first episode generated Showtime's highest ratings ever for a series premiere up to that time. The network had initially ordered 22 episodes for a first season, but after such a successful debut, they increased this order to 44 episodes. For the time being, Stargate SG-1 was a bona fide hit. Unfortunately, Season 1 has a somewhat slow start. After the fast-paced thrills of Children of the Gods and the contained suspense of The Enemy Within, first-season efforts like Emancipation, The Broca Divide, and The First Commandment feel rote by comparison, episode concepts which were done before or better by established science fiction shows. Things start to pick up around the middle of the season when Stargate leans back into its unique strengths. Episodes like The Nox and Thor's Hammer expand the Stargate universe even further, enriching the show's developing lore and folding in mythological influences beyond ancient Egypt. The later reveal of the Asgard is particularly memorable.
Oh my god.
I am the actual one, whom you know as Thor.
However, this mythological influence goes beyond simple aesthetics, leading to richly emotional storytelling in The Torment of Tantalus. While reviewing archival footage of the Stargate, O'Neill and Jackson are shocked to discover a previously successful attempt at activating the gate. The following expedition resulted in the loss of one Ernest Littlefield, fiancé to Catherine Langford, daughter of the Stargate's discoverer and the woman who recruited Daniel Jackson into the program. Now equipped with the knowledge needed to trace Ernest's whereabouts, Langford joins SG-1 on a rescue mission. In a departure from its usual fare, The Torment of Tantalus is less action-adventure and more of a science fiction fable about obsession and regret. The story repeatedly sets up a character's desire, only for the payoff to not quite measure up in some way. Langford is reunited with her long-lost love after many decades, only for Ernest to dismiss her and the SG team as hallucinations. Daniel is shown the find of his career, the embodiment of all of his passions, only to risk losing it a short time later. It's a dark and ponderous story, one which is stolen by its two guest performances. Elizabeth Hoffman as Catherine Langford, and Keane Curtis as Ernest Littlefield. Hoffman's take on Langford differs from the movie's original, more of a no-nonsense straight talker while still possessing a sense of warmth and friendliness. Ernest, meanwhile, despite his isolation, is less the expected crazed loner and more of a quirky hermit. By the time SG-1 finds him, he has spent more time living in this desolate castle than he ever did on Earth, yet he's been unable to move on from the life he lost. He is trapped within arm's reach of what he craves, but without any ability to use it, aptly mirroring the mythological figure of the episode's title. Daniel Jackson comes close to repeating Ernest's mistake. He becomes so obsessed with acquiring knowledge that he risks becoming trapped there himself. It is therefore fitting that Ernest is the one to break Daniel from his obsession.
I have to finish this.
It's not worth it.
This is.
Nothing is.
Well, our history as a people would be very different if everyone felt that way.
No prize is worth attaining if you can never share it. There would be no point. Believe me. I know.
In true Stargate fashion, the episode climaxes in a flight back to the Stargate as the ancient structure collapses around them. Jackson and O'Neill narrowly escaping before the castle is destroyed completely. The Torment of Tantalus is a quieter, more ponderous story than is typical for Stargate, but it manages to avoid pretension by keeping its focus squarely on the characters. This focus leads to more great outings in the first season, such as the Teal'c-centric Bloodlines. When Teal'c receives word that his son Ryak is to be implanted with a larval Goa'uld, he and SG-1 journey to Chulak to rescue Ryak and gain valuable intel on the enemy. Bloodlines is yet another quintessential Stargate SG-1 adventure, with plenty of well-staged action. It also introduces the incomparable Master Braytak, played to excellence by Tony Amendola.
Not bad for a man of 133.
But it's Teal'c's journey which makes the episode stand out. In a sense, the story of Bloodlines hinges on Teal'c's hubris. At first, his mission is to stage a triumphant rescue of his wife and son. After all, if he could escape Apophis' rule, why can't he do the same for his family? And with SG-1 and Master Braytak at his side, what's to stop him? However, Teal'c is soon hit by the reality of his actions. He finds his family exiled and destitute. It's Teal'c's wife Drayak who wants Ryak implanted for his safety.
Did you see where I am raising your son? Do you know what I have endured to convince the priests that we are still loyal? They were about to lift the banishment so that we could return to the city.
Despite being confronted with this reality, Teal'c refuses to accept it, even going so far as to kidnap his son, an act which almost gets Ryak killed. Only then does the truth finally get through to Teal'c.
I'm sorry, my son. It is I who must do this to you. Forgive me, my son.
Bloodlines is so effective as an episode because it manages to have its cake and eat it too. We get plenty of great Stargate action, and yet the ultimate lesson Teal'c learns is that he can't just shoot his way to freedom. The oppression of the Goa'uld goes beyond simply having more advanced technology. His people are enslaved by, but also dependent on the Goa'uld. Going in guns blazing may end up doing more harm than good. This idea is also reflected in the B-plot of the episode. While Teal'c, O'Neill, and Bra'tac go after Teal'c's family, Carter and Jackson attempt to steal a symbiote for study.
Daniel, what are you thinking?
Just that every single one of these infant Goulds will one day take a human life.
While cathartic in the moment, Daniel's actions ultimately harm his mission. After Teal'c is forced to give up his symbiote to save his son, Jackson and Carter have to scrub their mission to save Teal'c. Daniel's feelings in the moment may have been justified, but the lesson imparted to both he and Teal'c at the end of the episode is that this is a conflict they must fight with their heads as well as their hearts. Having made themselves a target of the Goa'uld, Season 1 sees the inevitable response from Apophis, an invasion of Earth itself. In a clever use of the alternate reality concept, the episode There But For The Grace of God gives the characters and the viewer a glimpse of the worst case scenario. While the action is confined to the standing sets of the SGC, the episode does a good job of conveying the devastation inflicted by the invasion.
Every one of those red dots is a destroyed city.
And the episode still manages to have fun with its concept, to play scenes which otherwise wouldn't be possible in the series. Granted, humanity can put up a fight, but Daniel's brief trip to an alternate reality makes it clear that in open battle, Earth is completely outmatched.
We're all in very big trouble. They're coming. They're coming.
With such a great setup, the episode Politics comes at the worst possible moment. Not only does the conniving and self-serving Kinsley swoop in to shut down the Stargate program, but he does so during a tiresome clip show episode. Politics does factor into the ongoing story at least, as Kinsley is successful in shutting down the Stargate program. Even so, placing this kind of episode here stifles some of the anticipation for the season finale. Within the Serpent's grasp sees SG-1 go rogue to intercept Apophis' invasion force and destroy it before it reaches Earth. The episode and its Season 2 opening follow-up within the Serpent's lair aptly display all of the show's strengths up to this point. The solid action, the sense of humor.
What now?
Now we die.
Well, that's a bad plan.
And focus on character. Even though the viewer knows deep down SG-1 will likely make it out alive, the strong writing does a good job of throwing out curveballs. Initially, SG-1 hopes to cripple Apophis' forces before they launch, only to discover they're on board a ship already on its way to Earth. This plan then turns into a suicide mission as SG-1 aims to destroy the ship while they're on board, only for a second mothership to render this plan redundant. Like any good adventure plot, it forces the viewer to wonder how exactly the heroes will get out of this one alive. The personal stakes of the action increase further when Jackson is mortally wounded in a firefight and left behind while SG-1 infiltrates the second ship.
Just go! I'll stay and watch your back.
In the end, it comes down to the wire. Jackson manages to heal himself and dive through the Stargate, while the rest of SG-1 and Bra'tac escape in some hijacked gliders just in the nick of time.
Space monkey. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this video and you'd like to see more, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, or you can join me on Patreon. Making these kinds of feature-length videos takes a long time, which means long gaps between uploads, which the YouTube algorithm does not like. So if you want to help me make more videos like this, follow the link below to see retrospective reviews early, uncut, and ad-free. If you aren't able to, I appreciate you watching my work on YouTube all the same. The rest of Stargate SG-1's second year feels more confident in its identity. Retreads of territory firmly covered by the likes of Star Trek take a back seat in favour of Stargate's unique strengths. Having dealt a blow to Apophis, SG-1 faces off against an ever-expanding roster of new Goa'uld system lords. Despite my quibbles, the Goa'uld make for effective recurring antagonists. The change from body-hopping consciousness to slimy brainworms is a clever way of summing up the themes of the story. For all the pomposity and arrogance of the system lords who insist they should be worshipped as gods, they are literally nothing more than parasites. Their empire is built on the achievements of greater minds. However, I've always felt there was a missed opportunity in expanding the roster of villains for the show, that being one of character. While the system lords vary in design, they all essentially have the same personality. All the system lords are arrogant, pompous, and cruel. When they are challenged, they all throw out the same threats and protests, right down to their vocabulary. The main variation comes in the physical threat each of them poses. Nearty carries out stealthy assassinations, Hathor seduces and manipulates, and Baal plots and schemes from the shadows. While this leads to some solid action throughout the show, few of the Goa'uld become truly great characters. Though the Goa'uld are the main villains, many of Season 2's episodic outings don't rely on them to drive their plots. Unlike Star Trek, Stargate's internal logic is remarkably consistent across SG-1 and its later spin-offs. Despite the retcons with the Stargate movie, the rules of what specific technologies or aliens can and can't do are strictly adhered to. This discipline on the part of the writers leads to some incredibly creative plotting. For example, the plots of several episodes hinge on Stargate Command or an enemy weaponizing the Stargate itself in some way, thanks to the established rules of how the device works. It's a clever way to save money by confining the action to the standing sets, but it also cranks up the tension, turning everyday acts like dialing the gate into gripping races against time. And no episode showcases this ingenuity better than A Matter of Time. When Stargate Command loses contact with SG-10, they discover the planet the team was sent to is now orbiting a black hole. With the stranded team beyond saving due to time dilation, they attempt to shut the gate down, but they soon realize the gate is projecting the black hole's influence into the SGC. If they can't break the connection in time, the entire planet will be pulled into the Stargate and consumed by the black hole. While most of the time the SG teams contend with galactic despots, in A Matter of Time the enemies are the laws of physics. Time dilation is, for lack of a better term, such an inherently cool concept, and Stargate utilizes it to its fullest. The effect has overtones of cosmic horror as time and space within the SGC become more and more warped as the episode goes on. Yet this effect is also what allows the SG team to ultimately solve their problem. Thanks to time moving slower within the base, Carter has enough time to work on her calculations, and Hammond and Teal'c have enough time to acquire the resources needed to execute the planned solution. In that sense, the episode resembles the structure and themes of a classic disaster movie. It's a story which respects the awesome natural power the main characters have confronted, but it also commends human ingenuity and resourcefulness. This time the action isn't a gun battle or temple run, but a physics-defying set piece. By this point, the gravitational pull from the gate is so strong, O'Neill and a Special Forces soldier have to rappel down to it to set off a shape charge. It's fantastically staged with some clever trick shots establishing the warped gravity of the space. Also in true disaster movie form, anything that can go wrong does go wrong. Shattering glass slices up the two men, their lines snap, the time they have to escape the blast radius rapidly ticks down, it's all great stuff. A Matter of Time is a terrifically engaging piece of high-concept sci-fi, which wows with its action just as much as it wows with its ideas.
Well, this might be a little difficult to accept, but since you reported for duty yesterday, 2 weeks have actually gone by. Now go sleep in.
In their ongoing struggle against the Goa'uld system lords, SG-1 encounters some new allies in Season 2, including the aforementioned Asgard, as well as the Tok'ra. In their two-part introductory episode, SG-1 encounters a resistance group of humans who are willingly joined with symbiotes. Though they would make for a powerful new ally, SG-1 and the Tok'ra fail to see eye to eye on one crucial matter.
Since you won't take new hosts by force, most of the time the Goa'uld dies with the host.
And this is what is about to happen to Selmak.
Unless
One of you wishes to volunteer to serve as a host.
I'm gonna pass on that.
The Tok'ra and their wildly different culture and philosophy add some fascinating shades of grey to the larger arc of the series. Up until this point, symbiotes and the implantation of them are portrayed as something monstrous, so the idea that someone would willingly subject themselves to such a thing turns the characters' and viewers' assumptions on their heads. While the Goa'uld Empire has overtones of a feudal society which we can recognize, the Tok'ra are something truly alien. Despite their insistence that the joining of a symbiote with a host is fully consensual and both parties are enriched by their experience, there's still an instinctual squeamish reaction to seeing a serpentine creature worm its way into someone's head.
I mean, if you are so disgusted by the very thought of blending, then how can we be associated with one another? I mean, it's obvious that you have distaste for our very being.
Meeting the Tok'ra confronts SG-1 with a kind of prejudice they may not have been aware they harbored. Their hostility towards the Goa'uld should be the result of what the Goa'uld do, not what they are. Once again, the core conflict of the episode is resolved through a character-focused story. This time the story is centered on Samantha Carter and her relationship with her father. Jacob Carter was first introduced in the episode Secrets. Among the plotlines of that episode, it established Sam and Jacob's estranged status, a relationship which is only weakened further by Sam's work on the Stargate program.
I'm talking about getting you into NASA, Sam.
There's a waiting list a mile long.
Not for you.
Dad, you can't do that.
I did.
Without talking to me first.
You're telling me you don't want this?
The work I am doing right now is very important to me.
It's not your dream.
Let's just leave it at that, please.
At least talk to the man. Do that much for me.
I knew sooner or later you'd make this about you.
And unlike most Stargate episodes, the plot lines in Secrets aren't resolved by the end. Not only are Sam and her father still estranged by the end, but Sam is hit by some devastating news.
I have cancer, Sam.
What?
Lymphoma. I was hoping to stick around long enough to see you become an astronaut. Sweetheart, nothing in the world can live up to the chance of actually going to space.
I'm sorry, I can't.
This thing's gonna go on for months, so you don't have to check up on me tomorrow or anything.
Dad, please don't go like this.
Congratulations on the medal. I'm sure you deserve it.
In the Tok'ra, to prevent her father's death, she reveals the Stargate program to him in the hopes that his life may be saved by joining him with a symbiote. This is also one of many instances where General Hammond shines. In his first episode, Hammond is a stalwart commander who makes harsh decisions and stands by them, repeatedly clashing with O'Neill. But as the show goes on, Hammond reveals himself as a loyal friend to all those under his command. In the Tok'ra, he demonstrates that underlying warmth again when he allows Carter to reveal the Stargate program to her father.
I travel to other planets, much farther away than any astronaut goes.
What, like in simulations?
No, in reality.
We discovered a piece of alien technology. It can send us to thousands of planets all over the galaxy.
You're not kidding, are you?
No.
Holy Hannah.
Later, under the threat of a Goa'uld bombardment, Jacob has to decide if he should accept the Tok'ra symbiote. Not only does this moment help ally humanity and the Tok'ra, but it also brings Jacob closer to his daughter.
You gotta know one thing. How proud I am of you. Even when I thought you were this whiz satellite geek. I was proud.
However, in a bit of dramatic irony, the Carters, having finally repaired their relationship, are forced to separate again as Jacob goes to fight and live alongside the Tok'ra. Throughout the rest of the series, Jacob Carter, played wonderfully by Carmen Argenziano, becomes a dependable ally in any daring plan with slim odds of success. The Tok'ra is also an example of the show's writers finding new ways to refresh the main arc of the series. Considering how frequently the Goa'uld feature in the series, there's a definite risk of them becoming stale or too easy to defeat. Thankfully, this is a pitfall SG-1 walks right up to, but successfully avoids each time. This is particularly evident in episodes like The Serpent's Song. Having defeated Apophis, SG-1 are stunned when their vanquished foe asks for asylum from the other system lords. Though they take him in, Apophis slowly dies when his demand for a new host body is refused. What follows is an acting marathon from Peter Williams as he tries desperately to convince his captors to save his life.
In exchange for all the knowledge of the Goa'uld, the secrets of star travel, our weapons, our power.
Go to hell.
There's a mix of emotions in watching Apophis's final moments. On the one hand, seeing such an arrogant and cruel tyrant brought down to such a low level is cathartic. On the other hand, there's something pitiable in seeing a man who claims to be a literal god confronted with his death.
I am afraid.
But the most surprising turn is when Apophis's original host emerges.
Simui! Simui!
That's ancient Egyptian. This must be the host.
Shirotai! Shirotai!
Suddenly, the characters and the viewer are reminded of the human cost of the Goa'uld's tyranny. While the members of SG-1 have their grievances with Apophis, they pale in comparison to the nightmare the host has been put through for the past few millennia.
Shiyak Hanoisun. Hehu. I told him this funerary statue would take his last breath and carry his soul back to Egypt.
Yet despite this small act of solemnity, the closing scene of the episode is another reminder of the depths of Goa'uld cruelty.
Sokar has a sarcophagus in his possession. With it, he can revive Apophis even from death, and torture him as long as he pleases.
Stargate SG-1's second season proved to be a step up from the already solid first year. However, the two-part finale, a confrontation with the System Lord Hathor, is disappointing. Part 1, Out of Mind, is yet another clip show episode. Part 2, Into the Fire, gets things back on track with more action, but generally it's not nearly as impactful as the first season's finale. This feeling of dissatisfaction crops up in several other Season 3 outings. Make no mistake, the season as a whole is still strong, with many enjoyable one-off stories. There's the action-packed Foothold, which pits Carter and Teal'c against the rest of the SGC after they've been taken over by an alien incursion. And the touching family adventure of the Crystal Skull.
Goodbye, Grandpa.
However, the Goa'uld arc makes up the weaker portion of the season. Despite the successful shakeups in Season 2, the Goa'uld conflict comes dangerously close to stagnation in Season 3. This isn't helped by some strangely delivered payoffs to story threads established in the show's very first episode. Daniel Jackson looking for a way to free his wife from Goa'uld control, and O'Neill hoping to do the same for his friend Skara, are arcs which maintain the personal stakes alongside the more epic scope of the story. What's odd, however, is how these personal arcs are concluded. Not in grand finales, but instead in episodic outings with no significant placement in the season.
I love you, Danielle.
I am sorry, Daniel Jackson.
I love you too. Much better.
This oddity also crops up later in one of Teal'c's arcs. Teal'c's momentary nemesis Tanith, a Goa'uld agent who murdered Teal'c's lover Shinnok, is unceremoniously killed off in the pre-credits teaser of a later episodic.
Tanith is dead.
That's nice. I'm happy for you.
This kind of thing leaves a lot of Season 3 feeling somewhat aimless. This struggle to keep the main story arc fresh is most apparent in the two-parter Jolinar's Memories and The Devil You Know. When Jacob is trapped in a hellish Goa'uld prison, SG-1 leads a rescue operation aided by memories Carter inherited from a dying Tok'ra symbiote. The two-parter is filled with a lot of potential which the show unfortunately isn't able to fulfill. This is a pair of episodes where SG-1 have to fight their way out of the closest thing there is to hell and face the devil himself. This premise, paired with an aesthetic ripped right from a Frank Frazetta painting, would lead one to expect another spectacular SG-1 action-adventure. Instead, the focus is mostly given to Martouf's lingering feelings for his lost love Jolinar, and his current feelings for Carter. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but Martouf is such a bland and uninteresting character, it really drags much of the episode down. Even so, the conclusion of Jolinar's Memories is notable for the surprise return of an old enemy.
I will reclaim my real name. Apophis.
I have mixed feelings on this. While Peter Williams is great in the role, and part of Season 3's issues is the lack of a chief villain, this two-parter already remedied that problem with the introduction of Sokar. In contrast to the shallow pomposity of other System Lords, Sokar is genuinely chilling. While other System Lords decorate themselves in gleaming armor or garish robes, Sokar is dressed in a dark cloak, the hood of which shrouds his pale face and milky eyes. While other System Lords orate loudly in booming voices, Sokar's power is communicated by how calm and measured his speech is.
Tell me, and I will grant you your wish, and brand you Lord of the Underworld.
All in all, Sokar could have been perfectly fitting as the new chief villain of the show. Instead, he is swapped out for Apophis, who rebels against him and gains control of Sokar's ships and armies, which threatens the balance of power in the galaxy. This feels redundant to me, as that threat already existed with Sokar. The show simply swapped out a new villain posing this threat with a familiar villain posing the same threat. It gives the series its big bad guy again, but perhaps at the cost of something more creatively fresh. Thankfully, a new recurring foe is introduced at the end of Season 1, the Replicators. Just as SG-1 are about to go on some leave, O'Neill is suddenly beamed away to an Asgard ship. Expecting to find his old ally Thor, he instead encounters a swarm of insect-like machines which are quickly devouring the ship. Taking inspiration from the work of nanotechnologist K. Eric Drexler and mathematician John Van Neumann, the Replicators offer a change of pace in antagonists for SG-1. Much like the Borg in Star Trek, the Replicators have a relentlessness to them. Nemesis, like all Replicator-focused episodes, combines two of Stargate's main strengths as a show: well-staged action and creative plotting engineered by in-universe consistency. Nemesis is packed with escalating tension as the Replicators spread like a virus throughout the spacecraft. Bullets hold them at bay for only so long. Instead, the solution is for SG-1 to crash the ship into Earth's atmosphere, riding the flaming wreck until they have enough power to escape through the Stargate. The Season 4 opener Small Victories is even stronger, which features surviving Replicators from the crash taking over a Russian submarine. Fighting the Replicators on a spaceship was already bad enough, but the claustrophobic interior of a submarine makes the battle even more desperate. Echoing James Cameron's Aliens, Daniel Jackson is forced to watch helplessly as the machines trap and then overwhelm O'Neill and Teal'c. O'Neill dropping his usually flippant attitude helps to sell the danger even more.
Listen to me! We are not getting out of here! Mission accomplished! Blow it! Jack! Davis! Give the order!
Once again, Carter engineers another fiendishly clever solution to save the team just in the nick of time, but it's made clear that the replicators pose an even greater threat than the Goa'uld. Thankfully, they're confined to another galaxy, for now. Although Apophis may have returned as the main villain of the show, Season 4 surprisingly changes gears by focusing many of its episodes on espionage and intrigue rather than space opera. What's most refreshing, however, is how this change turns a lot of our attention back to Earth. Now 4 years into the Stargate mission, this season carries with it a sense of how SG-1's missions are starting to change things on Earth. This is seen in episodes like Watergate, which sees SG-1 discover a rival Russian Stargate program.
It is quite beautiful.
What?
The rapid pressurization might cause your ears to block.
And Chain Reaction, where SG-1 comes into conflict with the mysterious organization known as the Trust.
I'm not leaving till I get what I came for.
Oh. And what are you going to do?
Well, I was thinking about shooting you.
The Trust was first hinted at during the Season 2 episode Touchstone, and later in Season 3's Shades of Grey, a rogue organization hoping to exploit the Stargate program to obtain advanced technology by any means they deem necessary. The Trust arc touches on a consistently strong point of conflict throughout the show concerning the very purpose of the Stargate program itself. On the one hand, Carter and Jackson view their mission primarily as one of exploration. On the other hand are O'Neill and Teal'c, who view their mission primarily as a way of acquiring new technologies to strengthen their respective worlds against the Goa'uld. Although the pitch for Stargate SG-1 was essentially Star Trek without the spaceship, the absence of a prime directive and its contemporary setting make it markedly different from the adventures of the USS Enterprise. Friend of the channel Daniel Orrit put it succinctly in our commentary of the original movie.
Compared to like Star Trek with its prime directive and all that, I love the fact that Stargate, the first thing humans do as soon as they're like minutes within getting onto the galactic stage for the first time is kill the head of state of the biggest nation in the galaxy and just bugger off. Like immediately chuck a tarpaulin over the Stargate and just leave it.
And they're also
So
just
perfect.
like, oh, do you want machine guns? We've got plenty of those.
Yeah, all your gods are fake. Here are machine guns.
These clashing viewpoints often lead to questions of how far the ends justify the means, as well as the moral responsibility SG-1 has taken upon itself as galactic liberators. This moral conflict is also at the heart of episodes like The Other Side.
You said yourself that we could not and would not devote the resources necessary to win a war.
Obviously, I was speaking in terms of committing military assets, human lives.
But there was a moral issue.
Yes.
But if we can provide the power of all that and more in the form of water, then the moral issue just evaporates. We're about to turn the tide of a world war that we know nothing about against an enemy that we know nothing about. Is that the right way to get their technology? Yes, but is it the right thing to do?
As well as the Tolan story arc.
I assume you want weapons technology.
One of those ion cannons would be nice.
And for what will you use such a cannon?
To defend ourselves against the Goa'uld?
But our research shows that you are far more likely to use our technology against enemies on your own planet.
These stories, as well as those surrounding the Trust, also serve to hold up a mirror to our characters, to make them question if their actions are always right. This is especially effective with O'Neill, whose military mindset often clashes with Jackson's more philosophical stances. This is where I have to state another controversial minority opinion because, despite how strong the cast is, Colonel Jack O'Neill is, in my opinion, the weakest. This is not to say Richard Dean Anderson puts in a poor performance or the character is overall weak, it's just that next to the other characters, O'Neill is the least interesting of the main team. Like his movie counterpart, Michael Shanks' Dr. Daniel Jackson is notable for breaking his nerdy archetype in some quite interesting ways. Despite his hurried speech pattern, he isn't a bumbling dork, but is instead highly confident and passionate. In later seasons, he even looks and acts the part of an action hero on par with O'Neill. Amanda Tapping's Samantha Carter is hyper-competent, smart, good-looking, and able to handle herself in a firefight, yet she's also soft-spoken and humble, maintaining an innate likability even when she's given the unenviable task of rattling off the majority of the show's sci-fi technobabble. Christopher Judge's Teal'c could so easily have become a Worf clone, but Judge balances his considerable physical presence with a sageness which is underpinned by his impossibly deep voice. His character feels almost Tolkien-esque in his quiet nobility and unshakable sense of honour, as well as loyalty to his friends. O'Neill, by contrast, feels far too close to the Han Solo archetype, a swaggering, wisecracking man of action who laughs in the face of danger and saves the world like it's no big deal. The deeper element, that this quipping persona is merely a front to hide the lingering pain over the loss of his son, is touched on and dispensed with quite early, leaving just the archetypal personality without as much depth. There's also the tired jocks versus nerds dynamic between O'Neill, Carter, and Jackson. However, this shortcoming is more a result of aging poorly than poor writing. Having a character to cut through the sci-fi technobabble and laser focus on what's important can be a valuable tool for a writer. What rubs me the wrong way about O'Neill is how he not only fails to understand basic and well-communicated information, but also seems to look down on Jackson and Carter having passion for their fields of interest. Richard Dean Anderson is certainly far more definitive as O'Neill than Kurt Russell, and Anderson's light-hearted influence on the series was a positive. However, at times O'Neill's flippant attitude can detract from the drama of many episodes. A prime example of this comes in the aforementioned Bloodlines. Teal'c returns to his homeworld and is confronted by the possibility that his wife and son have been murdered. While Christopher Judge wows with a committed and sensitive performance, O'Neill stands off to the side looking like he's been waiting for a bus too long. It's also worth saying that despite O'Neill's image as a quip machine, the vast majority of his lines aren't that sharp or witty. He comes out with some gems now and then.
The vehicle performed within expected parameters.
Woohoo! Sorry, sir. I couldn't help but get caught up in Teal'c's enthusiasm.
But for the most part, his shtick is made up of sarcasm and awkward pauses.
Sokar is a Goa'uld of ancient times. He was once ruler of the System Lords, but was defeated by an alliance of Goa'uld many centuries ago.
Yeah, basically he was the original Satan.
Now, isn't that special?
Ironically, while Kurt Russell was at his best in the Stargate movie as a winking badass, Richard Dean Anderson is at his best in the few instances he takes things seriously. All that being said, the humour Anderson brought to the O'Neill character, and to the show as a whole, does shine in the fan-favourite episode Window of Opportunity. While exploring some ancient ruins on a planet ravaged by solar flares, O'Neill, Teal'c, and alien archaeologist Malachi are struck by an energy wave which sends them into a time loop. The only way to escape the loop is to translate the ancient writings on an altar found in the ruins. Time loops as a concept were relatively new outside of literature at the time. Even so, Star Trek The Next Generation and The X-Files both beat Stargate to the punch with their time loop episodes. But while those shows used the concept to tell dark, suspenseful stories, SG-1 differentiates itself by using the concept for comedy.
Every time we loop, Daniel asks me a question, and I wasn't listening the first time.
You are not the only one who must endure some discomfort, O'Neill.
Sorry, sir. I didn't realize you were there.
The details of why the time loop began and how to stop it are immaterial. The highlight of the episode comes in the middle when O'Neill and Teal'c realize that as long as they are trapped in the loop, they are free from the consequences of their actions. The following Groundhog Day-like montage is a delight as the two run amok in the SGC.
Colonel O'Neill, what the hell are you doing? In the middle of my backswing!
Having O'Neill and Teal'c be the ones stuck in the loop rather than the more intellectual Carter and Jackson is what makes this light-hearted touch work so well. They don't escape the loop via some technical trick, as Carter and Jackson would have done, but by reasoning with Malachi, the instigator of the loop, on an emotional level.
I lost my son! I know! And as much as I could never live that over again. Could you?
Window of Opportunity is Stargate SG-1 at its most charming and fun. It also demonstrates how the show's unique creative vision can make old ideas feel fresh again.
Well, General, you know what they say. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
For the season finale, SG-1 once again contend with their old enemy Apophis. When the Goa'uld agent Tanith reveals the location of the Tok'ra's main base to Apophis, SG-1 races to evacuate while also using the opportunity to set a trap. Thanks to considerable advances in visual effects technology, Exodus manages to be even more epic in scope than SG-1's first showdown with Apophis without being a rehash. The episode graces us with multiple space battles, dogfights, and chases across the entire star system. But it's SG-1's trap for Apophis which is the true highlight. Using a spare Stargate, the team dials the black hole from the episode A Matter of Time and hurls it into the nearest star, forcing it to go supernova and wipe out the entire system, Apophis' fleet included. Action, spectacle, and drama are at their height in this finale and its follow-up enemies. Not only do SG-1 and the Tok'ra face down a Goa'uld fleet, but Teal'c also chases down his new nemesis Tanith, and SG-1 has to deal with Teal'c itself when he is briefly brainwashed to siding with Apophis again. It's a truly stunning two-parter. But by the end, with most of his fleet destroyed and his ship hurled into another galaxy, Apophis finally meets his end at the hands of the Replicators. Once again, the show was without a main villain, but thankfully the writing for the 5th season doesn't repeat old mistakes. Instead, it takes the opportunity to build up a new impending threat. Season 5 features many terrific standalone episodes. There's the claustrophobic horror of The Tomb.
Sir, we found the creature. It's dead.
That's good news.
The only problem is the symbiote's no longer inside it. That leaves Daniel, Major Valarin, and... well, the two of you, sir.
The tense race against time in Failsafe.
You know, I'd like to take this opportunity to say that this is a very poorly designed bomb, and I think we should say something to somebody when we get back.
I agree, sir.
And the fourth wall-breaking 100th episode celebration of the series itself, Wormhole Extreme.
We've already established that 1 shot stuns and 2 shots kills. Nick just shot everybody twice.
So 3 shots disintegrates them.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that, because that is quite possibly the stupidest thing I have ever heard you say.
Soon after this amusing diversion, Stargate SG-1 restates the threat of the Goa'uld once again in the two-parter Summit and Last Stand. Daniel Jackson goes undercover at a meeting of the most powerful system lords in the hopes of using a Tok'ra poison to assassinate them all. However, matters are complicated when a possessed former lover of Daniel's, Sarah Gardner, arrives at the summit as the herald of a powerful new threat, Anubis. At this point in the show, SG-1 seemed to be on a winning streak. Having taken out Apophis a second time and fended off the Replicators, the mission in Summit would seem like a slam dunk. This is why the two-parter makes sure to humble the characters severely. Not only does Daniel fail in his original mission, but he even fails in his impromptu one. He refuses to carry out the plan when the Osiris-possessed Sarah shows up, then he holds back to wait for Anubis, and after he's discovered, he's forced to leave Sarah behind anyway. The System Lords are not only not harmed, but they are stronger, having allied themselves with Anubis. Meanwhile, the Tok'ra fall under direct attack from another of Anubis' servants. Unlike previous battles, this attack is devastating. The action is grittier than usual, emphasizing the destructive power of Goa'uld weaponry and the loss of life sustained by the Tok'ra and the SG teams. The events serve as a wake-up call to the characters, who risked becoming complacent due to their recent victories. This complacency is well highlighted in a small scene between Daniel and a System Lord servant.
But what if they do not care what we have seen and heard? Because when they are done eating the symbiotes, they plan to put the leftovers in us.
You should only be so fortunate. I have served my master so well for so long in the hope that one day he would grant me the honor of implantation.
The honor?
Yes.
Having fought the Goa'uld for so long, Daniel seems almost personally offended by the idea of anyone still revering them. But after Last Stand, the Goa'uld's grip on power is still very much intact. It's clear that despite all they have achieved, SG-1 still has a long way to go. SG-1's other recurring foe, the Replicators, also make an unexpected appearance this season in Menace. On a planet desolated long ago by war, the team discovers a dormant android they later come to know as Reese. Talking with Reese, a great many questions soon arise. What happened to the planet? Why is she the only survivor? And why are there replicator blocks near where she was found? As Daniel gets to know the childlike android more, these questions are soon given some disturbing answers.
Remember when you said you wished that you could have more fun?
Yeah?
Don't be afraid. It's just a toy.
As much as I begrudge Stargate SG-1's tendency to over-explain its lore, for example with the Goa'uld, revealing this as the origin of the Replicators creates more story possibilities rather than closing them off. Knowing the Replicators were created as playthings by a child gives them an unexpectedly tragic quality. It's also an opportunity to highlight more of the team's prejudices, particularly O'Neill's. Unlike Daniel, O'Neill refuses to see Reese as a living person, and inadvertently repeats the mistakes of those on her homeworld. By failing to see past her artificiality and treating her as an other, O'Neill unwittingly brings about the scenario he fears the most, as Reese soon turns her toys against the base. Ironically, the machines only become a threat because of a failure to treat them with some humanity.
You didn't have to shoot her.
Yes, I did.
They didn't stop because you shot her. They stopped because she told them to.
Look. I'm sorry. But this is the way it had to go down. And you know it. This is SG-19er. Commence sweep. I want every one of those damn things out of here.
As SG-1's 5th season entered production, fans were met with a two-punch combo of bad news. Firstly, Showtime had decided to cancel the series due to declining ratings. The impact of this news was heavily mitigated thanks to the Sci-Fi Channel stepping in to renew the series relatively quickly. Secondly, Michael Shanks had announced he would be leaving the series, and there was nothing to soften this blow. There have been various rumours and theories surrounding Shanks' departure over the years, but the actor has since said that the chief reason was creative dissatisfaction. Daniel Jackson's main arc of rescuing his wife from the clutches of Apophis was wrapped up in Season 3. The following season began a new arc, but it was effectively a repeat of the first. A love interest is taken over by a Goa'uld, and Daniel seeks to free her. As Jackson developed as a character, he also moved further away from his scientific roots and more towards an action role. I previously mentioned this as a strength of the character, as it subverts the usual nerdy archetype. However, an unintended consequence of this is that Jackson starts to become a lot more like O'Neill. Not only does Daniel get more comfortable with guns, but he also develops a similar sense of humour.
If you're implying that everything Russian-made is of poor quality, actually, the sub is Swiss.
So they occasionally catch fire, but they keep perfect time. Sorry. I think I've been hanging around Jack O'Neill too much.
The asteroid's core is composed almost entirely of naquita.
Of course it is.
It makes up about 45% of the total mass.
Of course it does.
This character change possibly contributed to Shanks feeling as though he was no longer an important part of the series. Outside of his function of translating ancient texts, which could easily be done by another character, it could be argued Daniel Jackson lost his uniqueness as a character. Therefore, during the production of Season 5, Shanks asked to be written out of the show. In the penultimate episode of the season, Meridian, Daniel Jackson suffers a slow and painful death from radiation poisoning. In his last moments, he is given a choice to die on Earth or ascend to a higher plane of existence. In a moving scene, he says farewell to the friend who has been with him since the beginning.
You just giving up?
No. No. I'm not giving up, believe me.
go now. Everything's gonna be fine.
Reflecting the feelings of the production team, Season 5 eschews the normal cliffhanger in favour of something more poignant, but also uncertain. Though there would be more adventures through the Stargate, could the show endure at its new home without one of its core cast members? If you're enjoying this retrospective review, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, or if you want to support this channel more directly, join my Patreon where you can see videos like this early, uncut, and ad-free. While Stargate SG-1's ratings were slowly declining over its first 5 years, this wasn't the true cause of its cancellation, as most long-running TV shows usually see a ratings decline. The chief reason was plateauing subscription numbers. Stargate's network Showtime was a premium cable channel, and so a good chunk of its revenue came from paid subscriptions as opposed to advertising. Stargate SG-1 had initially brought in a subscriber boost for the network, but this steady stream gradually slowed to a trickle. Showtime attempted to make up the difference by syndicating SG-1 to other networks, but by the 5th season, Showtime believed the series had stagnated. However, it was thanks to Showtime syndicating the show that SG-1 was quickly renewed, as one of the recipients of the syndication package was the Sci-Fi Channel. The Sci-Fi Channel began life as a home for reruns and the occasional schlocky B-movie, but at the turn of the millennium, the channel made a push for original programming, commissioning expensive productions like Frank Herbert's Dune and Farscape. Reruns of SG-1 had been very successful on the channel, and so when SG-1 was dropped by Showtime, the Sci-Fi Channel was happy to step in and add SG-1 to its growing roster of original programming. In many ways, the Sci-Fi Channel proved to be a more suitable home for SG-1. Showtime, being a premium cable network akin to HBO, often aimed its programming strictly towards adults, as opposed to the more family-friendly adventure series SG-1 would become. Even so, SG-1 initially tried to fit the expected mold at Showtime, featuring nudity and violence in its premiere episode, which feels very jarring in retrospect. The Sci-Fi Channel, however, was much broader with its programming. Stargate SG-1 could not only fit comfortably on the cable network, but even pull in new viewers who may not have been able to fork out the cash for a Showtime subscription. For the time being, the Sci-Fi Channel appeared to be the ideal new home for Stargate SG-1. A more complicated problem to solve, however, was the departure of Michael Shanks as Dr. Daniel Jackson. Though the actor was convinced to return for a handful of one-off episodes, it was clear SG-1 needed a new member. Thankfully, this new member already presented themselves at the end of Season 5. Jonas Quinn, played by Corin Nemec, was introduced in the episode Meridian. Despite Corin Nemec only being 1 year Michael Shanks' junior, the character Jonas Quinn is clearly intended to be much younger than the rest of SG-1. This creates a new dynamic between Quinn and the rest of the cast. Whereas Jackson was an equal colleague to Colonel O'Neill, Quinn has to work hard to prove himself. Quinn also forms an unlikely bond with Teal'c, as the two can relate to each other as outsiders to Earth culture and custom. In a sense, Teal'c takes on the role of Quinn's big brother on the team. Meanwhile, Carter bonds with Quinn over their shared love of science. This is quite a refreshing change after Daniel Jackson gradually adopted O'Neill's sardonic temperament and lost some of his wide-eyed enthusiasm for SG-1's adventures. Because of this, Jonas Quinn's easygoing attitude and childlike curiosity are welcome additions to the show.
It's just that it's my first time in space. We'd only begun to consider the possibility of space travel. To actually be out here it's amazing.
Indeed.
Overall, Jonas Quinn successfully avoids the trap of being Diet Daniel Jackson and instead carves out a unique presence in the show. Despite his many strengths, what lets Jonas Quinn down as a character is his lack of development throughout the season. His introduction is well handled, and his dynamic with the rest of the team is interesting, even refreshing, but there are few great Jonas Quinn-centric episodes. For the most part, Quinn is a solid supporting character, but never feels truly equal to the main cast. There is, however, the hint of some greater potential. During a clash with the System Lord Nirti, there's the revelation that Quinn's DNA is somehow different than other humans.
You're not human.
I'm human. I'm just not from Earth.
Those few thousand years on another world have changed you more than you know.
Whether this was meant to hint at a larger arc for Quinn in the future is unclear, but ultimately, due to this lack of development, Jonas Quinn comes off as likeable but bland. There may have been potential for more, but unfortunately we'll never know. The reasons for this will be explored later. Despite SG-1's renewal on Sci-Fi coming with a slightly reduced budget, Season 6 opens with a bang in the two-parter Redemption, which sees the SGC and the Rebel Jaffa in their first major confrontation with Anubis. I said previously that despite how effective the Goa'uld are as recurring villains, as characters few of them surpass the presence of Ra in the original movie. That is, with the exception of Anubis. Whether it was a conscious effort by the writers or not, the greater sense of threat from Anubis comes as a result of remixing two of Stargate's best villains into a new character. Part of what made Ra so effective in the original movie was a sense of the unknown, something which isn't present with parasitic snakes. Anubis, being a partially ascended being with remarkable powers, retains some of that cosmic mysteriousness which the System Lords following Ra lacked. Then there's the character's appearance. At first glance, Anubis broadly resembles Sokar with his dark robes and calmer speaking voice, elements which made Sokar feel quite chilling, which carry over to Anubis. While other System Lords are essentially outer space tyrants with a cool aesthetic, Anubis feels like a genuinely powerful cosmic threat. That threat is properly communicated in the sprawling epic that is Redemption. Not only do we get some more Stargate warfare, with Anubis turning the SGC's Stargate into a bomb, but Teal'c also leads a raid on one of Anubis' bases with the help of Bra'tac and his son. Not only does this plotline pack in some good old-fashioned Stargate action, but it also features some great drama. After the sudden death of his wife, Teal'c fights to repair his relationship with his estranged son, Ryak.
Everything I have done for you.
And I am ashamed, for you have done nothing but bring pain and misery, and above all, false hope to countless Jaffa.
Then fire your weapon.
Christopher Judge delivers yet another richly emotional performance in the episode, especially in the scene where Teal'c and his son finally make amends.
Whether you believe in me or what I have chosen to do does not change the fact that I have never doubted your heart, Ryak. You need never win back my trust, my son, for you have never lost it.
The climax of the episode is a nail-biting set-piece, which sees O'Neill propel the unstable Stargate through a hyperspace window just in the nick of time, a plan which only succeeds thanks to Jonas Quinn's help, which secures him a place on SG-1. Stargate SG-1 couldn't have hoped for a better start to its new life on the Sci-Fi Channel, kicking off the season in spectacular fashion with thrilling action, creative plotting, and moving character drama. Redemption is also notable for the introduction of the F-302, humanity's first space-capable fighter. The F-302 is emblematic of another core strength of Stargate SG-1 as a series, which is the satisfaction the viewer gets from slowly seeing humanity transform into a spacefaring civilization. In their first year of adventures, the Stargate was the only piece of advanced technology at the SGC's disposal, but by its 6th year, Earthlings, or the Tauri as they are known to the rest of the galaxy, have gone from underdogs to a burgeoning galactic power. Thanks to the remarkable consistency of the show's internal logic and continuity, this thread feels extra rewarding for fans who can pinpoint the exact episode the Tauri acquired new technology and how it has been reverse engineered over the course of the series. The F-302 is the culmination of one thread, but the truly grand payoff comes in the episode Prometheus. When Carter has a run-in with an investigative journalist on the cusp of uncovering the Stargate program, the Pentagon offers the journalist and her team a once-in-a-generation exclusive for their latest project, the X-303, aka the Prometheus, Earth's first interstellar spacecraft. Naturally, things go haywire when it turns out the journalist's team are operatives working for the Trust.
Al, why are you doing this?
They're paying me.
We're supposed to be friends.
They're paying me a lot.
Who promptly hijack the ship and take it into orbit, leading to some Die Hard-style space-based action. The Prometheus itself continues the show's strong track record of outstanding design work. The aforementioned F-302 not only looks fantastic on screen, but it perfectly symbolizes the history behind its creation. It's the shape of a go-old death glider, but with the color scheme and detailing of a modern-day fighter jet. The Prometheus, on the other hand, looks like a modern-day Navy destroyer which has somehow sprouted rocket engines. The bulky shape of the thing also alludes to its origins, resembling less a spacecraft and more a titanic fortress. This is a design feature which future Tauri spaceship designs would further lean into, with the later Daedalus class looking like something halfway between a Gothic cathedral and an outer space warship.
So what didn't they go for?
The name I suggested.
For the ship. Yeah. Sir, we can't call it the Enterprise.
Why not?
While Prometheus is a great piece of standalone action fun, its follow-up, Unnatural Selection, veers into darker territory. Immediately after recapturing the Prometheus, Thor appears on the bridge and asks for SG-1's help in once again fighting the Replicators, who have taken over the Asgard world Hala. After offloading their unwelcome guests, SG-1 travel to Hala to activate a time dilation device to trap the Replicators there forever. Unnatural Selection is another great example of SG-1's trademark ingenuity, but it's also an example of some atypical darkness. There's some truly striking imagery when the Prometheus touches down on Hala, its surface having been flattened by the Replicators who have harvested all raw materials. The foreboding atmosphere created by the sight of this eerie landscape and the sound of distant thunder is intensified further when the team discover...
Sir, you're not gonna like this.
And when SG-1 encounter a new form of replicator.
If you haven't noticed, this entire planet is paved with replicators.
We are aware of this. We cannot allow you to stop them, I'm afraid.
Why not?
We are replicators.
At first, this new step in replicator evolution would appear to be a step backwards. After all, part of what made the replicators so threatening was their unrelenting swarm-like nature. Having such an enemy evolve into a more fallible human form risks undermining the danger they pose. However, this is quite intentional as the episode manages to combine its ingenuity and its darkness into a thrilling but disturbing climax, when Carter and O'Neill trick the replicator known as Fifth into letting them go.
So set the timer for 5 minutes.
It's cutting it awfully close, sir.
I know that, Major.
This turn of events builds on a similar idea seen in the previous season's Menace, where the burgeoning humanity of these cold machines is used against them.
They're escaping.
There's still 2 minutes left.
No, my son. They've made a fool of you.
They won't leave me, she promised.
Although SG-1 may have escaped for now, they would soon come to confront the consequences of this troubling act.
You used his humanity against him.
He wasn't human. Get that through your heads.
He could have fooled me.
Another significant departure from Stargate's usual fare comes in the episode The Changeling. Teal'c wakes up from a strange dream, only he has no forehead tattoo and no symbiote. In fact, he seems to be a perfectly ordinary human firefighter named T. What follows is an esoteric trip through dreams and reality as Teal'c constantly shifts between his life as a member of SG-1 and his other life as a firefighter.
Something's wrong. He knows it. What is happening?
I'm sorry, Teal'c. I didn't mean to wake you.
The episode itself was written by Christopher Judge, who uses the opportunity to show off his acting range by switching constantly between the stoic warrior Teal'c and the laid-back emergency serviceman with a heart of gold, T. By this point in the series, Judge is so familiar as his Stargate character that it's almost jarring to hear him speak with a normal human voice. The rest of the cast are also clearly enjoying the opportunity to stretch their acting muscles. The viewer is left constantly guessing as to what is really happening here, with a brief shot of Teal'c and Bra'tac in the aftermath of a battle providing a possible clue. But it isn't until T talks to Daniel Jackson, appearing as a psychologist of the same name, that the truth presents itself.
If you can't distinguish between them, if the one seems equally as real as the other, maybe you don't belong in either one.
In some ways, the episode could be compared to Deep Space Nine's Far Beyond the Stars, at least in presentation if not in subject matter. But whereas the DS9 episode ended its story on an effective, ambiguous note, the Changeling's final revelation is more definitive and therefore a tad disappointing. The twist is a clever one, and Teal'c is significantly changed by the events, but unfortunately this reveal can be summed up by the phrase, "It was all a dream." Even so, the dream is certainly a fascinating one, which affords the cast and crew the opportunity to step outside their comfort zones and experiment with the show's format. While the episode may abruptly rein itself in by the end, The Changeling is still memorable for that brief moment it was let loose. Soon after The Changeling, SG-1's 6th season comes to an end in full circle, which at one point was intended to end the series itself. Executive producers Brad Wright and Robert C. Cooper planned to wrap up SG-1 after 6 seasons. The original plan was for Stargate to return to the big screen in an SG-1 movie, which would set up a new spin-off show. In a sense, this would take Stargate in the same direction as Star Trek in the late 90s. Just as the Next Generation crew continued their adventures on the big screen while Deep Space Nine and Voyager expanded the Star Trek mythos on television, so too would the SG-1 ensemble lead a series of movies, while a new spin-off show would entertain audiences on television. The SG-1 movie would never see the light of day, however, as SG-1 the television show was renewed for a 7th season. The show was a rating smash for the Sci-Fi Channel, overtaking Farscape as the channel's most watched regular series. Due to the expense of a theatrically released feature film and the support from the Sci-Fi Channel, MGM, Wright, and Cooper ultimately decided to continue SG-1 on the small screen, folding in their ideas for a movie into the 7th season. Season 7 would see yet another shake-up to the show, or depending on how you look at it, a return to the norm, as Michael Shanks rejoined the cast as Daniel Jackson. Soon after leaving the show, Shanks was allegedly quite surprised by the vocal fan reaction to his departure. After all, his main reason for leaving was a sense that his character wasn't all that important anymore, so to see such a reaction came as quite a shock. Although he was no longer a regular cast member, Shanks was able to make several guest appearances throughout Season 6. During each return trip to the SG-1 set, Shanks was reminded of how much he enjoyed working with the cast and crew, who had grown close after over half a decade together. In a relatively short amount of time after leaving the show, Shanks and his representation entered negotiations to return to the series. Daniel Jackson being such a popular character among fans meant the showrunners were receptive to the idea. However, the possibility of adding an additional cast member's salary to the show's budget, and allegedly quite a handsome one at that, meant writing Jonas Quinn out of the show in order to return Dr. Jackson to SG-1. One can't help feel a little bit bad for Corin Nemec, who was just beginning to find his feet, and whose character had some great potential. However, Nemec understood the reasons for the change, and departed the series on good terms with the cast and crew. Thus, in the aforementioned Season 6 finale Full Circle, Jackson, in his ascended form, is punished when he tries to intervene in corporeal matters by stopping Anubis attacking Abydos. As punishment for his crime, Daniel is transformed back into a regular human being, and the knowledge he gained while ascended is erased from his mind. In Season 7's two-part opener Fallen and Homecoming, Daniel reacquaints himself with his old life, while SG-1 races to stop Anubis from acquiring a powerful new weapon from Jonas Quinn's homeworld. The two-parter deftly balances Daniel's return and Quinn's departure without either element subtracting from the other. Ironically, the brief time Jackson and Quinn work together on screen showcases how great these two could be together as regulars. Although Quinn found a bond with Teal'c and Carter, his work alongside Daniel Jackson is the first time he comes across as a genuine equal to any other member of the team.
Okay, do some kind of keyword search?
Yeah, for what, Achilles? Well, that's good. I'm glad to see that your memory's finally coming back, not to mention your razor-sharp wit, but why don't we try something like power core venting?
In the end, Jonas's return to his home world is tactful rather than rushed. While he never became all that close with SG-1, he was a steadfast ally, and his arc is given a fine conclusion.
You earned it.
Thanks.
And not a second after Quinn has left, SG-1 is back, the way fans know and love.
It's not that I mind rejoining SG-1 and exploring the galaxy, meeting new cultures, Jeopardy, saving the world, that kind of thing. We get paid for this, right?
Despite this initial feeling of business as usual, which characterizes many standalone episodes in the first half of Season 7, the second half of the season ramps up the threat of Anubis with the introduction of the Cull. First introduced in the two-parter Evolution, Teal'c and Bra'tac come across the aftermath of a recent battle. At first they believe it to be the result of a System Lord rivalry, only for the true perpetrator to reveal himself. Though initially intimidating in the original movie, after 7 seasons the Jaffa could be likened to the stormtroopers of Star Wars. Cannon fodder enemies who can barely hit the broadside of a barn and are easily dispatched with a healthy spray of bullets.
This is a weapon of terror. It's made to intimidate the enemy. This is a weapon of war. It's made to kill your enemy.
This is why the Cull warriors are so effective in their introduction. Not only are they borderline invincible, but what lies beneath their armor is truly horrifying. The Cull are not inhuman, but abhuman. Things given just enough life to understand how to take orders and how to kill, but little else. They appear not as corpses, but creatures who never fully formed.
I serve Anubis.
While their introduction in Evolution is a memorable one, the conclusion of the two-parter becomes sidetracked by a hostage plot in South America. The Cull's best episode in my opinion comes later in the season in Death Knell. When the Alpha Site comes under sudden attack from Anubis' forces, Jack and Teal'c are sent to find Carter, who is missing in action. The highlight of the episode is Carter's Predator-inspired contest with a pursuing Cull warrior. While Carter is highly competent, being as handy with a machine gun as she is with a microscope, Death Knell shows us a side of the character we rarely get to see. Alone, in the field, with no gadgets or weapons, Carter has nothing to rely on to survive but her own wits and resourcefulness. It's always great to see Stargate go gritty with its action, and it's no more effective than in Death Knell, which has some truly nail-biting moments. In these wordless stretches, the episode resembles the excellent Who Monitors the Birds from Space Above and Beyond, but much of Death Knell's runtime is taken up by the B-plot of the Tok'ra and Free Jaffa ending their alliance. This is an important story turn, building on the tension between the two factions first seen in the previous season's terrific episode Allegiance, and there's also rich material for Jacob when he realizes the Tok'ra leadership have cut him out of decision-making. There's also a logic in pairing these events with the down and dirty desperation of Carter's plotline. However, the two halves of the episode ultimately end up distracting from rather than reinforcing each other. That being said, it's still a captivating showcase of Samantha Carter's character, and another demonstration of the threat posed by Anubis. That same grit features prominently in the two-parter Heroes, which follows a documentary crew commissioned by the US president to put a positive spin on the Stargate program for the day it becomes public. I know this will be yet another controversial opinion from me considering how highly regarded the episode is for many fans, but honestly, I've never liked this two-parter. It's commendable in many ways, for its ambition and experimentation with narrative structure, unfolding in a non-linear fashion, and with filmmaking style utilizing handheld camera and interview pieces. There are also several strong guest performances from Saul Rubinek as documentarian Emmett Bregman, as well as Robert Picardo as Richard Woolsey. What rubs me the wrong way about the episode is how the death of recurring character Dr. Janet Fraser is handled. At first there's misdirection, where the episode arranged in such a way as to make the viewer believe it is O'Neill who has been killed. Eventually Bregman discovers the truth when he reviews footage from Jackson's camcorder.
Now you hang in there, Emmett. Yes, ma'am. God.
I got him! Jack! You're clear, Dr. Jackson. Sorry, medic!
Not only is this misdirection transparently manipulative, but it's also unintentionally callous towards Fraser's character, as if the audience is supposed to think, well, at least a main character didn't die. The final scenes of the episode are also a jarring departure from SG-1's usual tone, being inordinately serious and somber. Considering how closely the Pentagon worked with the show, I can't help but feel the episode leaning towards propaganda in these final moments. I know not everyone feels the same way, and I can understand why others regard the episode so highly, but for me, Heroes has always left a bad taste in my mouth. Season 7 concludes with what would have been the Stargate SG-1 movie, Lost City. SG-1 races to mount a defense of the Earth before Anubis arrives to conquer the planet. This quintessential Stargate adventure echoes the Season 1 finale in its basic premise, but in doing so, it only serves to highlight just how far humanity has come since. Whereas Earth was virtually helpless in the Serpent's grasp,
perhaps when the warships of your world attack, we'll be able to...
Excuse me, did you say the ships of our world?
Surely you have such vessels.
Well, we have a number of shuttles.
These shuttles, they are a formidable craft.
Oh, yeah.
In The Lost City, we get this.
Prometheus.
SG-1, this is Hammond. Do you read?
Yes, sir, it's good to see you.
This punch the air moment feels like the culmination of so much of the show. Whereas humanity could only hope to fend the Goa'uld off in small skirmishes before, The Lost City sees the Tauri finally meeting their enemies toe-to-toe in open battle. Even so, it's still a close-run thing, as SG-1 succeeds in unleashing an ancient weapon just in time to stop Anubis. However, like the previous season's Full Circle, The Lost City concludes on a triumphant but uncertain note as Jack O'Neill, overcome by the wealth of ancient knowledge in his mind, places himself in stasis. The others watch on, unsure if they'll ever see their friend again. Naturally, Jack O'Neill would return, albeit in a reduced capacity. Once again, Stargate SG-1 excelled in the ratings, and the Sci-Fi Channel commissioned an 8th season. However, Richard Dean Anderson was unsure about his return. At the time, the actor was raising a young daughter, and he grew concerned that his busy schedule filming SG-1 was taking too much time away from home. At the same time, Don S. Davis had to step away from the series entirely due to health concerns. While it was under less than ideal circumstances, this change in cast presented the showrunners with an option which would both accommodate Anderson's schedule while also serving the story. To explain Davis's departure, the showrunners gave General Hammond a promotion to leader of the Homeworld Security Department, leaving command of the SGC vacant. In the season opener, following a brief stint with civilian Dr. Elizabeth Weir in charge, more on her in a future video, Jack O'Neill is promoted to Brigadier General and made head of Stargate Command. This change allowed Richard Dean Anderson to remain on the show, but with far fewer shooting days. This change, far from limiting the show, gives O'Neill's character interesting new territory to explore, as seen in episodes like 0 Hour. With a presidential visit in 5 days, O'Neill struggles to adjust to his new role as head of the SGC. 0 Hour is a fun and creative bottle episode, which presents a new side to the show and O'Neill's character. The The usual SG-1 mission happens entirely off-screen. Between Baal holding the team for ransom, O'Neill also has to deal with an out-of-control alien plant, sluggish trade negotiations, and dull office admin. The usually implacable O'Neill finds himself totally out of his element, and he even considers resigning from his new position. His usual flippant mockery only serves to inflame the situation.
You dare mock me?
Baal, come on. You should know. Of course I dare mock you.
Overall, it's an episode about growth. O'Neill, like the show, is moving in a new direction, and though it may be scary, there's still a lot of fun to be had.
You should read what Teal'c and Daniel wrote about your conduct under fire.
Can I?
No.
Damn.
Season 8 has plenty of solid episodics, but there's a sense of looming finality to it all. The main characters are on their way to bigger and brighter things, and long-running villains the Trust, as well as recurring characters like Kinsey and Mayborn, are given suitable endings. And the Goa'uld largely take a back seat to the far more dangerous impending threat of the Replicators, who managed to escape the time dilation trap in the season opener New Order. While the Replicators remain a dangerous and fascinating enemy, now led by a nanomachine clone of Samantha Carter, the Goa'uld arc gets quite muddled in Season 8. With Anubis defeated in the Lost City, we once again have a lone system lord conquering the others and threatening the galaxy. This time it's Baal. However, Baal is only playing second fiddle to Anubis, who, as it turns out, survived the Battle of Antarctica and now hops from body to body in an energy form, not unlike Ra in the original movie. Anubis and Baal are effective villains, but their storylines in Season 8 feel like rehashes of ideas the show had already exhausted. Despite overstaying his welcome, Anubis' arc is brought to a conclusive end in the two-parter Reckoning. When the Replicators launch an attack on the galaxy, SG-1, the Tok'ra, and Free Jaffa form an uneasy alliance with Baal in order to use an ancient superweapon to stop them. Reckoning is classic Stargate, firing on all cylinders. Big, spectacular storytelling where time is short, the action is epic, and the fate of the entire galaxy is at stake. My only criticism with Reckoning is that it shows us something which would have been great to see more of, the heroes and the villains teaming up to stop a more powerful enemy. The brief interactions between SG-1 and Baal are a delight to watch. Both sides take every opportunity to snipe at each other, even as the Replicators close in.
You know that bitter taste in your throat? It's kind of wrapped around your uvula? That's what's left of your pride.
Perhaps you could curb your amusement for a moment.
The bristling chemistry between the actors and the charisma of Cliff Simon's performance did not go unnoticed by the showrunners, but more on that later. With this ultimate battle coming to a head on all fronts, Reckoning builds into an effective and intense climax. While Reckoning is the true climax of the season, the following episode Threads is the real denouement. It's akin to Babylon 5's Objects in Motion and Objects at Rest, in that rather than a grand epic showdown, Threads dedicates its runtime to saying a slow goodbye to this era of the show. Anubis is finally and definitively defeated at the hands of the Ascended.
No. No. No.
And Carter says goodbye to her father, who tragically succumbs to illness and age. In its commitment to its sincerity, the episode also pays off a long-running inside joke set up all the way back in Season 3, by having Carter and the rest of SG-1 finally go fishing with O'Neill.
This is great.
I told you.
I can't believe we didn't do this years ago.
Yes, well, let's not dwell.
There are no fish in this pond, are there?
Nope.
While Threads is the heartwarming farewell to the show, the following two-parter Mobius is an extended epilogue which has a little more fun with itself. During a mission into the past, SG-1 unwittingly creates a new timeline in which the Stargate was never found on Earth, and therefore the previous 8 years of adventures never happened. When this alteration is discovered via a videotape from the original timeline, the alternate versions of SG-1 must come together and repair their mistake. Mobius essentially functions as an extended look back at just how far the series has come. We re-encounter Teal'c as Apophyse's first prime, and O'Neill still depressed over the loss of his son. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sam are ostracized intellectuals, having never had the confidence or the opportunity to showcase their brilliance. Amanda Tapping's performance as the socially awkward nerd version of Samantha Carter is especially amusing.
Now, just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside doesn't... God, that's horrible. Who would ever say that?
These moments of fan service are nicely sprinkled in throughout the episode, including a payoff to the romantic tension between Carter and O'Neill.
See, usually I'm a very cautious person and I tend to think things...
And after this fun romp through time, SG-1 returns to where it left off, having satisfied both the characters and the fans.
Didn't that tape say there were no fish in your pond?
Close enough.
Having finally defeated their longtime enemies, and the team ready to move on to other things, Mobius would seem like the perfect way to wrap up Stargate SG-1 for good. Richard Dean Anderson was no longer able to commit to even a reduced filming schedule, and Amanda Tapping was also starting a family by that point, and so her availability for future seasons was in doubt. It seemed logical to make Mobius the end of Stargate SG-1. In its place, executive producers Brad Wright and Robert C. Cooper toyed with the idea of a new spin-off show called Stargate Command. Such a show could continue using these standing sets and ready-made props and costumes, while bringing in new characters who could stand alongside any SG-1 cast members who wanted to come back. Michael Shanks and Christopher Judge were keen to reprise their roles for the new series, but Amanda Tapping was unsure at the time. It was clear some new blood was needed to fill out the rest of the ensemble. Taking over as base commander was Beau Bridges as General Hank Landry. Beau Bridges, son of Lloyd Bridges and brother to Jeff Bridges, had a decades-long acting career spanning stage and screen by the time he joined Stargate, and had already worked with Brad Wright in the pilot episode of The Outer Limits. Lexa Doig, known for playing the title role in the sci-fi series Andromeda, joined the cast as Dr. Caroline Lamb. Amanda Tapping finally confirmed she would be able to reprise the role of Samantha Carter, however she wouldn't be able to film the first 6 episodes of the season. Leading SG-1 would be a new character, Lieutenant Colonel Cameron Mitchell, played by Ben Browder. In a rather serendipitous turn of events, Browder would be joined by Claudia Black as recurring character Vala Maldoran. Ben Browder and Claudia Black were well known to fans of science fiction for their starring roles in Farscape. The series was famously cancelled after its 4th season, but later concluded in the miniseries The Peacekeeper Wars. It was during Farscape's hiatus that Wright and Cooper first broached the idea of a role on Stargate SG-1 to Ben Browder. Now that Farscape had concluded, Browder could finally take them up on their offer. Claudia Black's Vala had previously been introduced in the Season 8 episode Prometheus Unbound. Her introductory scene is almost a parody of her first appearance in Farscape.
Well, you kept the wrong guy, because I don't know anything about the ship.
But you are very attractive.
What? Big guy. I'm flattered, really, I am. It's just that, you're not my type. Whoa, no, you don't have to do that. Don't.
Don't worry. I'm not gonna hurt you.
Thank God.
Much. I hope.
Although Vala would only return as a recurring character in Stargate Command, Claudia Black and Ben Browder both joining the series was a huge win for the new show. The show was still called Stargate Command quite far into production, with the title even being dropped in the opening scene of what would have been the premiere episode.
Welcome to Stargate Command!
But as production began, Wright and Cooper were receptive to MGM's suggestion of abandoning the Stargate Command show and simply rebranding it as Stargate SG-1 Season 9. This was a risky proposition, as for many fans Richard Dean Anderson was the face of Stargate SG-1. Due to this rebrand, it appeared to some that fan favourite Jack O'Neill had been replaced by a younger character who was, at first glance, a pale imitation of the wisecracking action hero that fans knew and loved. Despite the abandoning of the Stargate Command series, Stargate SG-1 Season 9 functions as a soft reboot of the show. Cameron Mitchell is cleverly introduced as an audience surrogate character, a great admirer of SG-1 and their exploits who is already tied into the mythology of the show as his character was present during the Battle of Antarctica. In some ways it's the inverse of Jonas Quinn's introduction. Rather than framing the story from SG-1's perspective as they struggle to accept a new member, Season 9 begins by following Mitchell struggling to reunite SG-1, who have all moved on to other things. Carter now works at Area 51, Jackson is prepping to join the Atlantis expedition, and Teal'c has found a place among the leaders of the new Jaffa nation. Eventually, Mitchell's wish is granted when Vala arrives with an ancient tablet supposedly pointing the way to a vast treasure. The ensuing adventure puts SG-1 on a path to confront a powerful new enemy, the Ori. I won't beat around the bush here, so I'll just come out and state another controversial opinion. The Ori arc, covering seasons 9 and 10 of Stargate SG-1, is, for me, the best part of the show. It takes all of the best bits of the Go Old arc and builds them into something with higher stakes, richer drama, a grander scope, and more intriguing narrative ideas. And beyond the writing, there's a lot to like about the new cast. Personally, I am a huge Farscape fan, which shouldn't surprise longtime viewers of this channel, so it's a delight to see Ben Browder and Claudia Black together again in another sci-fi series. It's also worth noting that neither of their characters are carbon copies of their Farscape roles or cheap imitations of established Stargate characters some may perceive them to be replacing. Cameron Mitchell is not the discount version of Jack O'Neill many would assume him to be. While they do have some crossover in their sense of humour, Mitchell is far less confident.
What if the world needs saving?
Well, if the world needs saving, I will be there to do what I can.
What if the world needs saving because I screwed up because you weren't here in the first place?
He is defined by his near-death experience at the Battle of Antarctica, his fight to recover from his injuries, and the survivor's guilt he feels over those in his unit who didn't make it. He's a man out to prove himself, to others certainly, but himself mostly. Whereas O'Neill was eternally optimistic, Mitchell is terrified of failure, of letting himself down and the people around him. Mitchell's eternal battle to prove his worthiness makes him just as reckless as he is heroic.
Okay, that thing is going to kill him.
Okay, that's enough for today.
No, I can do this.
Mitchell's doggedness is also reinforced by his humour, whereas O'Neill's one-liners and sarcasm often came at the expense of the drama. Mitchell's sardonic remarks and big expressions helped to reinforce the drama.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa, man! Bullets bounce!
Ultimately, Cameron Mitchell is far more than a mere O'Neill stand-in, and quickly comes into his own as a distinct and interesting character, anchored by a fantastic performance from Browder. Meanwhile, Claudia Black is so memorable as Vala Maldoran that I always forget she isn't even a regular cast member until the following season. Vala fires off a ton of great lines in the first episode of the season.
Thank you so much for the lovely greeting party. We all had a wonderful time searching each other, didn't we, boys? I know nothing about your fair planet, other than it seems to have a rather interesting, if somewhat limited, gene pool.
And maintains this infectious charisma and humour in every subsequent episode she appears in. However, there are more layers to Vala than one might expect. As the former host of a Goa'uld, Vala was hated and rejected by her homeworld and took up a life of crime to help herself because she believed no one else would. This is what makes her journey with SG-1 so compelling. At first, she joins them simply as a way to find more riches and amuse herself at the same time. But as the series goes on, Vala slowly opens up to the team, and while she maintains her sarky demeanour, it's clear she starts to care for them, and they for her. Other new cast members like Beau Bridges as General Landry and Lexa Doig as Dr. Lamb slot into the show just as smoothly. In many ways, they are the polar opposites of their predecessors. While Hammond was a stern commanding officer with a heart of gold underneath, Landry comes across as warm and friendly in a folksy kind of way. And in contrast to the nurturing Dr. Frasier, Dr. Lamb is more blunt and reserved. Later on, we discover her stout temperament may have a lot to do with her strained relationship with her father, who is General Landry himself.
I spoke to Mom recently. All those years I was growing up, I resented the fact that you never told us anything about your work, about why you had to leave us for days, sometimes weeks at a time. But now, I'm beginning to understand how hard it must have been for you. Talking to Mom the other day, I wanted to reassure her, to tell her everything, but I couldn't. It was hard.
This kind of dramatic character conflict is woven into the new cast well without ever feeling forced or inappropriately angsty. It feels refreshing following the preceding seasons where the regular SG-1 ensemble became such a well-oiled machine that many scenes felt as though they were simply going through the motions. Seasons 9 and 10, however, are purposefully made to shake things up. After the typical Indiana Jones-style adventure of the two-parter Avalon, the following episode, Origin, changes gears when Jackson and Vala are unexpectedly transported to another galaxy. There they discover a medieval-like society whose denizens worship an all-powerful pantheon of gods called the Ori. As antagonists, the Ori are an excellent example of power creep being used effectively. At first glance, the Ori are a repeat of the Goa'uld, alien beings who demand to be worshipped as gods and destroy all those who oppose them. However, what makes the Ori more interesting is that they truly seem godly. The Goa'uld were powerful, but much of their power can be ascribed to advanced technology, which any sci-fi fan will recognize: spaceships, force fields, energy weapons, and so on. While they may have seemed all-powerful to those they oppressed, there was never any doubt in the minds of the main characters that what they were fighting were not gods. The Ori, however, are not only powerful in ways the characters cannot fully explain, but their Christian mythological inspiration means their impact hits far closer to home.
Look, just because we know there is some beings on a higher plane of existence than ourselves does not mean there's not an order of being higher than them. At least I reckon that's what my grandma'd say.
I mean, somewhere in there you gotta fill in the blanks with a little faith. I had a grandma too.
Their esoteric might is aptly demonstrated when Vala is condemned as a heretic and chained up to be burned at the stake. At first, Vala maintains her sense of humour, and despite Daniel's struggles, the viewer is confident that a last-minute rescue will save Vala from the flames.
I was trying to politely explain what was going on, and then his wife started screaming and accusing me of being overcome, at which point I believe I suggested she might want to think about procreation with herself.
But as those flames draw closer, Vala's defenses fall and Jackson is reduced to pleading for her life.
Okay, listen to me! Listen to me, you have to believe me! You're killing an innocent person!
Blessed are those that deliver us from evil.
And in a shocking turn, the fire reaches Vala, and Daniel is forced to watch in horror as she burns to death. In the moment, there appears to be no getting out of this. No last-minute rescue, no wounds which can be healed, no alien medical technology to help her. For all intents and purposes, Vala is dead. This makes what follows feel genuinely miraculous. It's a clever way of introducing a new antagonist for the series, as in this moment they function as much-needed saviors. Their heavenly home in the city of Celestis may even lead a viewer to wonder if these godlike beings may not be intrinsically evil despite the extremism of their followers. That is, until the episode finally lets the curtain drop, revealing a pit of fire silhouetting the Ori's satanic herald, and backed up by a score which sounds like it's been ripped right from the Omen soundtrack.
In the name of the gods, ships shall be built to carry our warriors out amongst the stars, and we will spread origin to all the unbelievers.
Hallowed are the Ori.
Hallowed are the Ori.
Though an invasion is on the horizon, much of Season 9 depicts an ideological conflict across the galaxy, as the priors of the Ori slowly convert more and more worlds to their religion. What makes this conflict so interesting is that it's largely centered on faith. The power of the Ori is undeniable, and despite SG-1's knowledge of what the Ori really are, they have no evidence to back it up. Furthermore, they have no way of effectively fighting back against the Ori, so any world that does resist is almost certain to perish. What follows is the prelude to a holy war, which includes plague, pestilence, and a swarm of almost locusts. The conflict especially hits home for Teal'c when the new Jaffa leadership is swayed to the Ori side. Though the Jaffa leader Garrick, played by Louis Gossett Jr. of Enemy Mine fame, is the antagonist of the arc, the story is largely sympathetic to him. Having been under Goa'uld control for so long, it's easy to see why many Jaffa would seek solace from a force like the Ori, even after freeing themselves from slavery. The path proposed by Teal'c and Bra'tac is more moralistic, but it's also more uncertain and difficult. As the strife within the Jaffa escalates, Teal'c is forced to confront Garrick directly, not by standing against him, but by reminding him of their shared struggles and sense of brotherhood.
Stay this course, and you will have no choice but to spill the blood of your brothers. And you may start with me.
Louis Gossett Jr.'s performance strikes the perfect balance of intimidation and nobility, a man who simply wants what's best for his people, and he displays a great deal of selflessness in his ultimate redemption.
If we help you, then we're done.
But I will die free!
The nuances, difficulties, and cost of this conflict are evident most in the episode Ethon, when an inhabitant of the planet Tigalis informs Stargate Command that his nation has sided with the Ori in exchange for a superweapon they can use to attack their Cold War rival, the Tauri decide to step in with disastrous consequences. What makes the conflict in this episode so difficult to resolve is how desperate each faction is. All sides are driven by fear for their survival and fear of the other. In a rare turn for the show, Ethon is a narrative where characters are swept along by larger events, unable to make significant change. Attempts at manipulating either side of the planet's Cold War or to destroy the Ori superweapon fail utterly. The gauntlet is truly thrown down when the Ori weapon destroys the Prometheus, Earth's first starship, and a symbol of how far the Tauri have advanced. Though only a minor recurring character, seeing the ship's commander, Colonel Pendergast, go down with his ship is devastatingly effective.
Fire the weapon! Wait, so!
Even after Daniel Jackson manages to pull off a miracle in quelling the conflict, the episode eschews Stargate SG-1's usual upbeat ending.
So I take it then you haven't heard. Soon after we left, the talks broke down. And we've been unable to make contact with him. General Landry had the Daedalus reroute on its way back from Atlantis. The Stargate is presumed buried in the rubble.
None of this darkness overtakes the show, however, as SG-1's 9th and 10th seasons still remember to have fun in episodes like Ripple Effect and Bad Guys. The former is an extended tribute to longtime viewers of the show, where parallel reality shenanigans facilitate the resurrection of long-lost fan-favorite characters.
Daniel? Teal'c, where's General O'Neill?
I'm sure you all have a lot to catch up on.
The latter, meanwhile, delights as an impromptu Die Hard spin-off, which sees SG-1 becoming the unwitting villains of a hostage standoff. There are some terrific turns from the guest stars, but it's Michael Shanks who steals the show with some of his best comedic acting.
She started it. I think you started it when you kissed Harry.
Shut up! You're hostages! This is like a life and death situation here. Start acting like it. Don't eyeball me.
In the season finale, Camelot, the Ori launch a full-scale invasion of the galaxy using a supergate. The Tauri and their allies decide to muster all their strength and meet the Ori head-on. Camelot makes the ultimate statement of Ori power by completely pulling the rug out from under the audience. Echoing Season 8's Reckoning, Earth, its allies, and some enemies all gather together in one massive fleet to stand against their common foe. From here, viewer expectations are obvious. A desperate but epic battle against the Ori ships, and when all hope seems lost, Teal'c will swoop in at the last minute with much needed reinforcements to turn the tide. The climactic battle of the episode fits this structure to a T, but only to prime the viewer for when the episode breaks with this structure. Rather than a triumphant victory, Camelot sees Earth and its allies suffer a crushing defeat. The fate of every major character is left uncertain, and Vala is left standing at the heart of the horrors to come. With the Ori invasion now in full swing, Season 10 expands the conflict into a full-scale war, which puts the Tauri and their allies on the back foot from the first episode. Despite all of SG-1 surviving the pivotal battle of the Supergate, it's clear they have no hope of matching the Ori in open battle. It isn't long before the Ori's relentless war machine conquers both the Jaffa homeworld of Chulak and their capital Dakara. In order to turn the tide, SG-1 embarks on another Indiana Jones-style treasure hunt, facing down a living, fire-breathing dragon, and even meeting the wizard Merlin in the flesh.
You look familiar. Genevieve. Oh, my dear. It's been too long.
While the Ori continue to be the primary threat of the series, Season 10 is also where the former Goa'uld system lord Baal really cements himself as a fan-favourite villain. Baal was first introduced all the way back in the Season 5 episode Summit, and made another notable appearance in Season 6's Abyss.
Do you not know the pain you will suffer for this impudence?
I don't know the meaning of the word. Seriously. Impudence, what does that mean?
Like many Goa'uld characters at the time, Baal came with an interesting design and posed a unique physical threat, but wasn't all that interesting as a character. Over the course of his subsequent appearances, however, this began to change. Unlike most other system lords, Baal's demeanour was far more passive-aggressive than megalomaniacal, and his modus operandi was more subtle and insidious. However, most of the character's success can be attributed to actor Cliff Simon, whose charisma was enough to make him stand out as a villain, even when the character was initially written in a more typical way. The character's enduring quality is cemented further by the existence of his seemingly endless clones. No matter how many times SG-1 captures, kills, or humiliates Baal, he always comes back with that same wry smile, hiding yet another elaborate plan to trap the main characters. While Baal makes several great appearances this season, particularly in the two-parter The Quest,
I need your help.
Well, that's hardly surprising. I know where you come from, you're considered relatively intelligent, but by galactic standards, that's not really saying much. Wouldn't you agree?
His best outing comes in the episode Insiders. When Baal's ship crash lands on Earth, he informs SG-1 that his clones have turned against him, and in exchange for wiping them out, he will give them the location of an ancient superweapon capable of destroying the Ori. However, the Baals the team come across all claim to be the original, and all claim SG-1 are walking into a trap. The episode is a terrific showcase of Baal's unique strengths as a character. As each new Baal is captured, SG-1's attempts to figure out exactly who's who and what they're planning become increasingly convoluted in the best way. Also, the episode has plenty of fun with puns.
Chief, got a full count. 2 strikes, 3 balls.
I understand you got yourself a few extra balls.
Those are the balls?
More like dots, really.
Eventually, the other shoe drops, revealing that SG-1 rounding up all of the Baals to figure out Baal's plan was in fact Baal's plan all along. After a tense standoff inside the SGC, the Baals escape, having slipped through SG-1's fingers yet again. It's an episode which keeps the viewer guessing until the very end, packed with humor, sprinkled with action, and more than enough Baal for your buck.
He was thinking that one up the whole way home.
Season 10 also marked a huge milestone for the series, as it officially became the longest-running American science fiction show ever at the time. In celebration of this achievement, Stargate SG-1's 200th episode is truly something to behold. When Martin Lloyd, creator of the series Wormhole Extreme, which is loosely based on SG-1's actual missions, arrives at Stargate Command to ask for notes on a new movie script, the ensuing dramatized pitches send the episode rocketing into stratospheric meta heights. If the previous 100th episode celebration was SG-1 winking to the audience, 200 is the show putting on a full-blown party for itself. With the framing device established in the pre-credits teaser,
no one does that anymore. You just throw up the title and get on with it.
with the framing device established in the pre-title card teaser, the episode shows its hand as simply an excuse to put on a parade of sketches, parodies, and fourth wall breaks, all the while the cast and crew seem like they're having a blast. In a Mobius strip level inside joke, the episode even parodies Farscape, with Claudia Black reprising her role as Eren Sun.
Pharrell.
Oh, son of a hazmat!
Shots!
But my personal favourite sketch is the Thunderbirds-inspired segment, with puppetry created by the crew from Team America.
If each symbol represents a specific point in space, then 6 of them would create a sort of box. The intersection point between those 6 points would indicate a destination. Maybe, just maybe, the 7th marks the starting point.
While SG-1 has always had its tongue slightly in cheek, 200 is the show fully throwing off all pretenses and simply embracing the silliness of the sci-fi genre and television production. As a viewer, you simply have to surrender yourself to the absurdity and embrace the fun.
Indeed.
To PI, coming this fall.
Having had its fourth wall-breaking fun in 200, the rest of SG-1 Season 10 continues to deliver great material in the Ori arc, now primarily centered on the character Adria, played by a post-Firefly Marina Baccarin. As excellent as the Ori arc is, one area where it could have delivered more is in the relationship between Vala and Adria. Adria sees Vala as her mother, as Vala did give birth to her. However, this was not a natural pregnancy, and from another perspective, Vala was merely used as a vessel by the Ori to birth what is essentially the space Antichrist.
Okay, we all know, darling, that you have telekinetic powers. You can stop showing off now.
As mentioned before, Vala begins the show afraid of growing attached to anyone and instead keeps her relationships superficial. This is what makes her relationship with Adria so difficult, because on some level Vala clearly does think of Adria as her daughter, but she's unable to get close to her due to the whole aforementioned space antichrist thing. The dramatic tension between the two of them flares up in a few episodes, but I've always felt the dynamic between these two characters could have been mined for even richer material. The latter half of the season sees SG-1 using an ancient weapon to destroy the Ori, and in the penultimate episode, a mortally wounded Adria fights to ascend before her death. It's a solid episode, but I've always wished for a bigger emotional payoff to Vala and Adria's arc in this episode.
I always wondered if you had it in you to kill me.
Despite SG-1's success in destroying the Ori and their herald gone from the galaxy, the Ori conflict is still far from over. Unfortunately, this was a conflict cut suddenly short when the production team learned that the Sci-Fi Channel had decided to cancel Stargate SG-1. The Sci-Fi Channel's reasons for this have never been made entirely clear. Many news outlets speculated about declining ratings and rising production costs, but Sci-Fi Channel themselves stated their reason was not ratings-based and have never explained further. News of the show's cancellation came well into Season 10's production, completely blindsiding the cast, crew, and fans alike. Ironically, the production team had been anticipating the end of the show since Season 6, and had written every subsequent season finale to function as a potential series finale at the same time. It was thanks to the show's success on the Sci-Fi Channel that SG-1 continued for so long, and yet just when the showrunners had gotten comfortable enough to expect an 11th season, that's when the axe fell. After Sci-Fi cancelled the series, Brad Wright and Robert C. Cooper tried to find a new home for SG-1, eventually drumming up interest from Apple, who suggested turning the show into a web series exclusive to iTunes. However, a non-compete clause in MGM's contract with Sci-Fi prevented the deal going through. Thus, Stargate SG-1 abruptly ended with the Season 10 finale unending. While under heavy attack from Ori motherships, Carter activates an Asgard time dilation device which slows down time aboard the Odyssey long enough for Carter to find a solution to escape destruction. What was meant to be a matter of weeks frozen in time turns to years, decades, and potentially to the end of the team's very lives. Unending is a strange and solemn note to end the series on. Rather than an epic battle to save the galaxy or an Indiana Jones-style romp through an ancient alien temple, the episode simply spends time with this found family as they live out the rest of their lives in their little bubble of time. Of course, it's inevitable that Carter finds a way out of their predicament, reversing time back to the moment before the team became trapped, but the strength of the story comes from watching these characters grow in ways they never could in the regular series.
50 or 60 years? Something interesting must have happened. Obviously, I hooked up with someone. Was it you, Muscles? It can't have been Mitchell, can it? General Landry?
And in its final scene, Unending lives up to its title by having SG-1 step through the Stargate one more time for further adventures. Because, in truth, this would not be the end of Stargate.
Just another everyday mission to save the galaxy, sir.
Indeed.
Godspeed. There's something eternal about Stargate SG-1, which is strange considering its contemporary setting and close association with a mid-90s feature film. Yet SG-1 is not a snapshot of a bygone era of television or film the way some other science fiction shows are. It began as such in its early days, but the show quickly developed into something else. It became a show about change, about discovery, about exploration. Ironically, despite the change in creative direction to a pulp action-adventure series, Stargate SG-1 overall represents the themes and ideas which so captivated me when I first saw the original movie. Stargate SG-1 was seemingly the one sci-fi series which could survive anything. It could be cancelled and then revived elsewhere. Major cast members could depart, return, and then depart again, and the series wouldn't suffer because of it. And no matter how many planets SG-1 visited, there was always more adventure waiting just beyond the event horizon. Thank you for watching. These supercuts are a new thing I'm trialing because the YouTube algorithm apparently isn't doing a good job recommending each video in these retrospective series, so hopefully supercuts should help with that problem. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on all new uploads. You can see videos early, uncut, and ad-free over on my Patreon page. I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members with an ultra thanks to Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Edmark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yane, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, have a good one.